family has asked us to announce that following this service, interment will take place at Beit Olam Cemetery, the Liberty Aid section. The family will be returning to the community room at the Sherry Park Apartments, 2201 Acacia Park Drive, where they will be receiving calls of condolence until 5 p.m. today. Contributions are recommended to B'nai B'rith or the Ohio Parkinson's Foundation. The mysteries of life and death are beyond human understanding. We are perplexed and overwhelmed when pain and anguish befall those whom we love. In sorrow confronted by death, which has taken Millie from our midst, we feel our own frailty. Like morning dew, we glisten for an hour or two, but then disappear into a new day. Our God of our ancestors, even 1,000 years in your sight are as a passing day, an hour of the night. Our generations come and go, but you, O God, endure forever. We are always in your hand, in death as in life. Help us to look beyond the loss of a beloved mother, grandmother, and to realize that death cannot destroy the bonds of your everlasting love. Sustain us with the knowledge of our faith that you will not allow us to suffer oblivion. For you, Eternal One, have taught us the way of life, and through you we gain eternity. And we say, Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, dayan hamed. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, the righteous judge. The prophet Job teaches us, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, but now taken away, and still we praise God's name. Mildred Silver, daughter of Anna and Maxwell Huff, is missed and mourned by her children, Leslie, Alan, Larry and Mary Beth, and Arlene and Fred, by her grandchildren, Michael, Rachel, and Allison, by her cousins, especially Carla and Roger, by her nieces and nephews, Leonard, Annette, Harvey, and Linda, by her sister-in-law, Norma. She was preceded in death by her parents, Max and Anna, by her siblings, Harold, Marvin, and Sydney, and by her husband, Jerome. Mizmor David, Adonai ro'i lo achzar, v'noteshe yarbitzeni, amei menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi yeshovei v'yanchileni, v'ma'aglei tzedek l'ma'an shmo. God is our shepherd, we shall not want. God causes us to lie down in green pastures, leads us beside still waters, and restores our soul, guiding us on the right paths for the sake of the divine name. Even when, as at moments like this, we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we fear no evil. You are with us. Your rod and staff comfort us. You prepare a table before us, even in the presence of our enemies. You anoint our heads with oil. Our cup overflows. Ach tov v'chesed yirdufuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai la'orech yamim. Surely God will guide us through all the days of our lives, and we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Millie was a beloved wife, mother, adoring grandmother. We read from Proverbs 31. Eshet chayil mi'imsa, v'rachok mipnei michra, v'tachva lev ba'ala v'chalal lo yachzal, v'galtenu tov lo ra kol yemei chayah. What a precious find is a woman of valor. Her worth is far above rubies. Her husband put his confidence in her, and he lacked nothing good. She was good to him all the days of her life. She opened her hand to the needy and extended her hand to the poor. She is clothed with strength and splendor. She looks cheerfully to the future, opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She oversees the activities of her household and never eats the bread of idleness. Her children come forward and bless her. Her husband in his time praised her. Many women have done superbly, but you have surpassed them. Sheker hatan leheva upayofi, shayirat Adonai hi hitaveh, kunola mipnei yadeha, v'yehalaluha b'sha'arim ma'aseha. Charm is deceitful and beauty vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hand. Wherever people gather, they shall speak her praise. Millie will be remembered by her caregiver, Becky, by her granddaughter, Allison, and by her sons, Les and Larry.
Ecclesiastic 3 talks about a season for everything. This is a season that we normally would mourn Millie's life, but we're not going to mourn Millie's life. We're going to celebrate her life. She was a special person. I think everybody loved her. I don't think one loved her any more than the others because she was just that way. She kept a high spirit, and she just really was a good person. She knew that with me, it was something about the connection that her and I had. She knew that if she called me any time of day or night, she knew that I was coming. So that's where I am with Millie. I loved her. I will never forget her. And it's just one of these things. I am hurt, but I do know that God has her. And I know that he blessed her life. She loved her family, and she loved her girls that took care of her. So it's just, what can I say? She was a special person. Memories of taking her to the hospital and bringing her home. I was looking at my car the other day where the seat is down like for a kid because Millie was so short, and I had to lower it all the way down in order to get her in the car. So we was on our way home coming up Mayfield. Sun was shining directly in her face. So I reached over and took my sunglasses, put them on her face, and she sit there just as happy as a lark, you know. But like I said, it's just one of those things. I will miss her, truly miss her. So I thank you for this opportunity.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Allison, and I am the youngest of the 3 grandchildren to this beautiful woman. I just wanted to take a few minutes and share a little bit about my grandma with all of you. Now, most of you in this room probably knew my grandmother in some way or another, whether you're family and you grew up seeing her at family gatherings and holidays, or your friends that got to cherish special moments with her throughout your lives, or maybe you're one of her caretakers who worked so hard over these last 8 years to help her. I had the pleasure to know my grandmother for the last 23 years, but I was pretty lucky as a kid. See, I lived about 45 minutes away from her, and she would pick me up from school and pick me up from day camp, and she babysat me, and sometimes she took care of me when I was sick. She spoiled me to no end, which I'm sure was out of love, but it kind of made me a little bit of a brat when I was a kid. I didn't understand how much I had to be grateful for. To little me, almost every day was, all right, I get to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house. It was normal. Now, don't get me wrong, my grandmother spoiled all of her grandkids as much as she possibly could. For example, I was told that when she used to keep a really strict kosher in her house. So for my mom and my uncles, it was unheard of to have something like pepperoni sitting in the fridge. But 5-year-old me, loved pepperoni. So guess what was always in the fridge when I was over? When my cousins would come to town, she made sure that they had bagels and all kinds of food. My grandma always wanted to make sure that everyone was fed. She also let my cousins and I pretty much run the house. It was our castle. We would run around the different rooms that normally I wasn't even allowed in. She really, really loved us, and there was no doubt in anyone's mind about that. Now, with this love came 2 things: She was very protective of us, and she worried a lot. I remember when I was about 7, there was this horrible thunderstorm, and for some reason or another, I was pretty scared by it. And on top of that, my grandpa wasn't happy with me for some reason. So I remember I ran into the kitchen, crying and terrified, and she stopped what she was doing and pulled me into her arms to give me a hug. And I didn't hear her yell at my grandpa too much, but when he came in a few minutes later, raging, she laid it on him. No one was going to hurt her grandbaby. In those moments when I was in her arms, she made me feel safe. I knew that no matter the storm, my grandma would always protect me. The price for this deep caring and love was the worry she felt when we weren't in her arms. So when I went to Italy about 5 years ago, we had to keep it a secret from her, so that way she wouldn't get all upset and stressed. So I got to do something special. I got to get her a special gift so that when I got back, I could give it to her. And that was this necklace. If you can't see it, it's a light purple heart pendant with gold speckles. My grandmother loved purple. You got her anything light purple and her eyes just lit up. But this was extra special because it came from one of her grandkids. So, someone recently told me that you don't always know how much you mean to someone. I knew my grandma loved me, but seeing her wear this necklace every time she saw me made me smile. Knowing that a photo or hearing my name could give her a little bit of strength, that's when I realized how much she meant to, or how much I meant to her. As a kid, I didn't always know how to show my gratitude, and I know now that I could never thank her enough for everything that she did for me. But I am so grateful that I had the chance to tell her how much I loved her. I'm so grateful that I got to spend as much time as I did with her, even after I moved away. And I know she treasured those moments too. So Grandma, I know you're looking down on us. Sorry. Right now. And I know that you are so proud of all the men and women that we have all become. Sorry. I hope that you can hear me when I tell you thank you. Thank you for caring for me and my cousins and my mom and my uncles. Thank you for showing me how to be strong and how to love with no end. You lived a long and wonderful life. You touched so many people in more ways than you probably ever knew. We love you and miss you, but mostly we are grateful that we had the opportunity to know you. Thank you.
I'm Les. I'm the oldest son. My mother was a traditional Jewish woman. She loved to cook and she loved to eat. She always liked to have company over. I remember Passover Seders and Thanksgiving. She would just do a lot to cook. She would be in the kitchen, and sometimes she'd get a little frustrated, and my dad would tell me to go back in the kitchen and help her out. I'd be there for a few minutes, and all of a sudden she'd say, "Go away, I'll do it myself. I'll just do everything myself." And I think she just wanted reassurance that she was doing a good job and everything would be all right that evening. My mother, back when I was very young, she always took me to my grandfather's house, Max Walkov, over on Overlook. And we'd go to shul. Me and my grandfather and my mom, we'd go to a small shul on Taylor Road. And my mother was very proud of that. She really encouraged me to get a good Jewish education. She sent me to Park Synagogue for bar mitzvah and then confirmation. That was very important to the family. She took me to Havdalah services, and she always carpooled us 3 times a week to Park Synagogue, where we learned Hebrew, and we learned Jewish history, and Jewish prayers and customs. So she stressed education in the family and that we all have a good education and be good Jewish people, just good Jewish folks and get a good education. My mother always knew where to find things in the house. My dad was one who always lost things. I could remember he always lost his glasses, or he lost his wallet, or he misplaced his car keys. And then he'd be running around looking, going crazy. Where's my keys? Where's my wallet? But Mom had great instinct. She knew where everything was in the house. So she said, well, did you look between the pillows when you were laying down on the couch? Did you look upstairs under the bed? Did you leave your keys in the car or whatever? So she had great instincts, and he says, oh yeah, I found them. They were under the pillow upstairs in the bedroom. So she had great instincts. She loved to save things too. If you go over the house now, you got everything there. I mean, she saves. She was a great saver, and she didn't like to throw things out. And a lot of times that came in handy because she had a closet up in the attic where she kept my dad's tax returns and everything else. And so when I would talk to my dad about some kind of business or like that, my dad would always refer to Mom. Hey, where's this or where's that? Oh, it's up in the attic. It's over here. It's over there. And she knew it. She knew the house. She's really good. And I'm going to miss her. She was just a real good person. And that's all I have to say.
I'm Larry. I'm the youngest son. Arlene is my silent partner. Well, I thought I'd give a little of the lighter side of my mother. I mean, we've touched on some of the many themes. Certainly, food is one of those themes. My mom loved to cook. She also had a sign in her kitchen that said Millie's Kitchen, and it truly was Millie's Kitchen. My next door neighbor, may he rest in peace, Fred Bonhard, I used to play with when we were younger. He said that, Larry, you can't walk through Millie's kitchen without eating something. She would make sure you ate something. I actually observed another Fred, my brother-in-law, Fred Cook, one day coming into the kitchen, and my mom, of course, said, Fred, sit down, have something to eat. And Fred started saying, no, no. And before he knew it, he was still saying no, but he was sitting, eating, still saying no. So no never meant no in my mother's kitchen. She had sort of an old world, I wouldn't say diet, but things that she cooked. Lamb stew, veal and potatoes, stuffed peppers. Definitely not Nutrisystems, but very hearty. My mom also had what I would say is an underrated sense of humor. Usually when my dad was in the room and we were talking about things, my dad would pretty much do all the talking. And she would sit there quietly and nod. Sometimes when I was just talking with her, she'd tell me about her growing up in the Glenville neighborhood at 99th and Austin, where they had a house that she loved. Her family growing up had a drugstore at Superior and 125th with a soda fountain. I used to hear stories about that. But when I was sitting there, just the three of us, my dad, my mom, and me, and my dad would be telling stories of his old neighborhood, which was Kinsman. My mom would sit there, and sometimes I remember one day he was telling me about the various stores on Kinsman, where his friends lived, where John Adams High School was. And he was talking about it, and I was listening. I really like history. I like Cleveland history particularly. And he mentioned that there was a speakeasy close to 55th and Kinsman during the Prohibition days. And then he said, and right next door was a shul. And I looked at them and I said, a shul right next to the speakeasy? My mom lifted up her hand, cupped it, lifted up her hand and said, L'chaim. Again, with the food, one of the more amusing things that my parents did is that, I don't know one's mentioned it yet, but they loved traveling. They traveled all over the world. They visited my brother Leslie in Korea when he was in the Peace Corps. They went to Mallorca. They went just everywhere. They went to Rome. But whenever they traveled on an airplane, my mom did not have a high opinion of the food that was served on an airplane. So she decided to take matters into her own hands and would bring hot corned beef sandwiches, very well wrapped so the heat stayed in. And then in the middle of the flight, she would pull out the corned beef sandwiches for her and Jerry. And of course, the wafting steam and flavor, you might say, must have stunned the others on the plane. So, as I said, my mom had an underrated sense of humor. There's the famous Silver sense of humor, which has been passed down from generation to generation among the males of the family. But I was sitting one day on our back porch listening to stories from my dad. Again, my mom sitting quietly. And they were telling me the story of when they went to Rome. And while in Rome, they went to visit the Vatican, and they met a priest from Cleveland. And both of my parents loved Cleveland and, very loyal forever. Had a conversation with him, became friendly. And the priest invited them into St. Peter's for a mass that the Pope was leading. And if you were a priest, according to the story my dad told, you sat closer up to the front. So they got to sit up front at this mass with the Pope. And they really enjoyed that. So, of course, I asked the question of my mom was whether she offered any corned beef to the Pope. And, of course, she immediately said, he made it kosher. So I really can only echo everything that Allie and Leslie and Becky said. My mom stood for kindness, affection, loyalty, humility, humor, food, and love. These are the things that really matter. She had a great 95 years and 95 years of greatness. Thank you.
Esai Nail Ha'arim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri, Ezri Me'im Adonai Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz. We turn our eyes to the mountains. What is the source of our help? Our help comes from God, who is the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is our protection, a shield at our right hand. The sun will not harm us by day, nor the moon by night. Adonai will protect us and watch over our coming and going, now and forever. Adonai yishmor tzeitecha uvolecha me'ata v'ad olam. Please rise. El malei rachamim, shochen b'maromim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע המזהירין, את נשמת אחותנו מלכה שהלכה לעולמה, בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתה, אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר, Amen. Exalted and compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Mildred Silver, daughter of Anna and Max. She has now gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, may she find perfect peace in your sheltering embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May she now rest in peace. And we say, Amen. Please be seated.